AMD stock was one of the only few AI stocks that was green this past week. Now, in today's episode, I actually want to take a closer look at two major events that AMD stock investors should know. The first one is obviously AMD's analyst event, and the second one is a very crucial update in their training market. So let's take a closer look in today's episode.
I want to thank the Motley Fool for sponsoring this video, and check out fool.com/Jose for the 10 best stocks to buy now. With that link, you get a promotional offer for their subscription service. Now, let's continue with today's episode.
All right, like I mentioned, AMD was one of the few stocks that was up in the past 5 days. The stock was up nearly 2%. Now, after hours, it does seem to be a nice excitement. We did see that on Friday, Berkshire Hathaway did purchase Google, which is creating some bullish sentiment in the tech market. Now, AMD has pretty much carried my portfolio this week, as some of my AI stocks have definitely seen a bit of a trickle down. Now, the first thing I want to take a closer look at that AMD investors should know was on November 13th, AMD did announce that the MI350 series GPUs were creating some efficient performance on ML-perf training. Now, for those that are not familiar, there is this industry benchmark, ML-perf, that is used to kind of see how chips do in certain types of workloads. So there's the ML-perf inference, which is a benchmark for inference. And then there's one for training. The most recent one was the 5.1 training benchmark. And it was the first submission using AMD's Instinct MI350 series GPUs. So it does include both the MI355 and the MI350X. Now, kind of comparing the MI350s to the previous MI325 and the previous MI300, you do see some vast improvements. So this is the fine tuning of Llama 2 $70 billion training. And first, the longest was the MI300, which took about 28 minutes. Now, the MI325 was an improvement at 21 minutes, but you do see some vast improvements with the MI355. The MI355 took about 10 minutes, so about 2.8 times faster to train versus the MI300, and even 2.1 times faster than the MI325. So this is what is exciting about the MI350 series, right? They are way better than the MI300 and the MI325. And this is definitely going to drive some nice demand for AMD's GPUs, AI GPUs, especially for the next generation, right? It showcases how AMD is improving by each generation, and we are all super excited for the MI450. Now, within this, AMD also wanted to compare with NVIDIA's. Now, if you look at the FP8 benchmark here, we do see that AMD is very competitive to the B200 and the B300. Now, NVIDIA didn't do FP8 benchmarks. I think they did only FP4. But AMD goes on to say that FP8 is still very crucial, and that's why they're still focusing on it because it is still highly widely adopted by customers today and best fit for large scale, high accuracy model training. Now, they even showcase comparing it to a previous FP8 training. So, compared to the GB200 that they showed last quarter or the last training 5.0, the MI355 is about 10% faster. So AMD is showcasing that they are very competitive in training, at least for 8 models, 8 GPUs, right? So remember, the other thing I do want to mention is not necessarily a bearish point, but AMD only did the training for the Llama models. Now, in these benchmarks, there are a lot of different models that you can do this benchmark for. Out of this benchmark, this was the only one AMD showcased. Now, this does indicate and showcase that AMD does have this great partnership with Meta, as we do know that Llama is a Meta model. So it can showcase that AMD is at least making some improvements with the models that they are partner with. The other key indication that they showcase is that in total, 9 key partners, Asus, Cisco, Dell, Giga Computing, Cray, Mango Boost, MTAC, QCT, and Supermicro all submitted training results on AMD Instant Hardware, marking the broadest industry engagement to date for AMD and ML-Perf training. Now, that's what you want to see, right? You want to see those key partners showcasing that they know how to run these platforms. Not only that, every partner submission was around 1% within AMD's own submission. So this also indicates that it doesn't matter who you work with. AMD has made it where it's very easy to do what they showcase with anybody else. So that showcases the easement of transferring. And overall, this could be seen as a very nice bullish indication for AMD. Now, AMD is super excited. They mentioned with the MI450 next generation, they expect even more and more growth. Now, the next thing I want to look at for AMD is their AMD Financial Analyst events. And this was extremely bullish, in my opinion. We did see that AMD projects about $20 in earnings per share by the at least 2030. They mentioned within the next 2 to 5 years. And if those numbers are true, I personally believe AMD is extremely cheap, right? If we look at a 20 earnings per share and you give normalized PE ratio for the semiconductor industry of 30, that's a price target of $600 for AMD. Now, I am just going to cover a quick highlight of this. I did more of a deeper dive in earlier this week, but I want to cover this is the weekly episode. So, what AMD investors should know. The first thing is within the next 3 to 5 years, AMD expects greater than 35% compounded annual growth rate target. That is much higher than the current 21% compounded annual growth rate that the company has delivered for the past 5 years. The main reason is hyper growth happening in a lot of their avenues from AI, from CPUs, from consumers, from data centers. Now, within this, they are increasing some strong numbers. They expect 50 to 58% gross margins driven by richer product mix from enterprise and AI. They expect operating margins to exceed 35% as higher margin data center revenue scale. And they are targeting 20% annual growth in earnings per share for the next 3 to 5 years. Now, if you want to stay ahead of the chip market and the AI market, make sure to hit the subscribe button. We are doing daily free videos on the most popular AI and semiconductor stocks. Our goal is to hit 85,000 by the end of the year. Now, if you want more than YouTube, if you want to join the community, make sure to join us at whatthechipHappened.com. Deep dives on semiconductor and AI stocks, episode slides, monthly live Q&A, community of serious investors, and much more. Check out whatthechipHappened.com. Now, back to the episode, another interesting mark was the core driver for the data center, and that is TAM is expected to grow dramatically, 40% compounded annual growth rate till 2030. That's about a $1 trillion market within the next 5 years. So this is very exciting because historically AMD was only giving us to 2028. Now, many were wondering, oh, what happens after 2028? Do they expect a market downfall? But no, here AMD indicates that this AI market is going to continue to grow at least till 2030. And this is going to help their data center revenue, where in 2020 was roughly 70% of total revenue. Now is estimated to be around 47%, and we expect that to grow over time. Now, they want to continue to grow market share, and this is what gets me pretty excited. Right now, in forms of server CPUs, they currently are at around 40% market share. AMD believes they have a clear path to over 50% market share, positioning the company for segment leadership. And now, within the data center AI market, which is pretty much the GPU market, they see a clear path to double-digit market share in this critical segment. I think that's pretty exciting because even if they just get 10% market share, that is a lot and a lot of billions of dollars in revenue. Now, in the client market, they expect to exceed 40% revenue market share within the next 5 years, up from current levels, driven by enterprise adoption and then an expanding AI portfolio, which increases average selling price, which is definitely very beneficial for earnings per share. Now, the embedded market, they're targeting around 70% revenue market share in the core FPGA business. Now, the four major growth opportunities are data center AI at gigawatt scales. This is exciting for the MI450 in quarter three of 2026, followed by the MI500 series in 2027, as there is crazy demand for AI compute. Like I mentioned, the server CPU of over 50% market share is creating massive excitement for their core product. The physical AI and edge intelligence, they believe this is a $200 billion market by 2035, and AMD has a unique advantage with its adaptive computing portfolio, securing over 50 billion in design wins since 2022. And right now, there is this tipping point in enterprise AI adoption where over half of Fortune 100 use Ryzen. The AI portfolio has expanded 2.5x with 250 plus platforms, creating a substantial growth for runway for this company. Now, the one thing that AI investors should know from their financial analyst event is that the $1 trillion market is crucial and that there is no other silicon TAM that is as exciting as the data center TAM. And for that reason, Dr. Lisa Su, AMD CEO, mentioned that this is where they have gone all in terms of strategic investments in this area. It makes sense, right? The data center market is where all the money is. Now, within that $1 trillion total addressable market, this is just silicon. It's not other opportunities there. It doesn't talk about networking. So the opportunity for a lot of AI companies here is pretty exciting. Now, overall, the market can continue to be pretty funky. I don't expect stocks to always go up, but I do believe the long-term tailwind for the next 3 to 5 years for A&D is pretty much intact. And if they continue to win, if they even get 10% market share, they're showing some great advancements in training. They are showing some great advancements in inference. They're showing strong confidence in the consumer, the data center, in the CPU and the GPU market. What's there not to like, especially with over $20 earnings per share within the next 2 to 5 years. So let me know what are your thoughts. Take care, have a good day, and see you all next time.